If you've ever said, I eat keto, but I keep falling out of ketosis, this message is for you. Because ketosis is not just about what you stop eating. It's about what you eat consistently enough to train your metabolism to burn fat 24 hours a day. Most people think ketosis is fragile. They think one wrong bite destroys everything. But the truth is, stable ketosis is built with the right foods eaten the right way at the right time. Today, I'm going to show you how to eat foods that protect ketosis, support your brain, calm insulin, and keep your body in fat-burning mode day and night. Ketosis is not a diet trend, not a food list, and not a willpower challenge. It is a hormonal state. And misunderstanding this single truth is why millions of people fail, quit, and blame themselves for something their biology was never taught to handle. Every time you eat, your body does not ask how many carbs you tracked or how clean your plate looks. It asks one brutal question. What just happened to insulin? Because insulin is the master switch. When insulin rises, fat burning shuts down instantly. Not slowly, not eventually, immediately. This is not opinion. This is physiology. The human liver stops producing ketones the moment insulin signals that glucose is available, even if that signal is small, even if it comes from foods labeled keto. Here's the shocking part most people never hear. You can eat zero sugar, avoid bread completely, and still block ketosis if your meals repeatedly stimulate insulin through excess protein, hidden sweeteners, stress hormones, or electrolyte depletion. Studies show that insulin does not respond only to carbohydrates. Certain amino acids from protein trigger insulin release as well, especially when fat is too low. This is why people who eat lean keto feel exhausted, hungry, and stalled. Their bodies are not in ketosis. They are in metabolic limbo, stuck between glucose burning and fat burning, where hunger hormones scream and energy crashes. Ketosis exists only when insulin stays low enough for long enough that the liver switches fuel systems. In that state, glucagon rises. Fat cells release fatty acids and the liver converts them into ketones, beta-hydroxybutyrate, acetoacetate, and acetone. These molecules are not just fuel. Research shows ketones act as signaling compounds that reduce inflammation, protect neurons, stabilize brain energy, and improve mitochondrial efficiency. This is why people in true ketosis report mental clarity, appetite control, and emotional calm. Those are not placebo effects. They are biochemical consequences of a hormonal shift. But insulin is not the only hormone involved. Cortisol, the stress hormone, can silently sabotage ketosis even when carbs are low. Chronic stress tells the liver to release glucose through gluconeogenesis, which raises insulin and blocks ketone production. This is why sleep deprivation, exercising, and undereating fat can knock someone out of ketosis just as fast as a sugary meal. Your body interprets stress as danger, and in danger mode, it prioritizes glucose, not fat burning. Here is a health fact that should change how you see food forever. Insulin only needs to rise slightly to shut down fat burning. It does not need to spike. It does not need sugar. It just needs a signal that energy is abundant or stress is high. This is why grazing all day, even on keto snacks, keeps insulin elevated enough to prevent deep ketosis. The body never gets the hormonal quiet it needs to switch fuels. Clinical research on ketogenic diets for epilepsy, type 2 diabetes, and neurodegenerative diseases confirms this again and again. The therapeutic effects only appear when insulin remains consistently low, not when carbs are simply reduced. In fact, studies show that patients who consume the same number of carbs but increase fat and manage protein achieve higher ketone levels than those who just cut carbs alone. Ketosis is not subtraction, it is hormonal precision. Another uncomfortable truth: artificial sweeteners can stimulate insulin through the cephalic phase insulin response. That means the brain tastes sweetness and signals insulin release even before glucose enters the bloodstream. This response has been documented in metabolic studies and explains why zero-calorie sweeteners can stall ketosis, increase cravings, and confuse hunger hormones. The body prepares for sugar whether it arrives or not, and insulin pays the price. Electrolytes also control hormones. Sodium, potassium, and magnesium influence adrenal function and insulin sensitivity. Low sodium increases aldosterone and cortisol, which indirectly raises insulin and increases glucose production. This is why people who fear salt on keto feel weak, dizzy, and hungry. Their hormones are under attack, not their discipline. Ketosis is the state the human body evolved to use during periods of food scarcity. It is not extreme, it is ancient. Our ancestors spent large portions of their lives in low insulin, fat-burning states between meals and seasons. Constant insulin elevation is a modern condition driven by constant eating, refined carbohydrates, and chronic stress. When insulin never drops, fat cells never release energy. Hunger becomes constant. Weight gain becomes inevitable. This is not a personal failure. It is a hormonal trap. When ketosis is understood as hormonal, everything changes. Food becomes information, not comfort or punishment. Fat becomes a signal of safety, not an enemy. Hunger becomes quiet, not obsessive. The brain shifts from glucose spikes and crashes to steady ketone fuel, which research shows produces more ATP per unit of oxygen than glucose. That is efficiency. That is why the brain prefers ketones when they are available. And here is the most powerful fact of all. Once insulin is controlled, the body self-regulates. Appetite drops naturally, cravings fade, energy stabilizes. This is why ketosis feels effortless when done correctly and impossible when done wrong. The difference is not discipline. The difference is hormones. Ketosis does not ask you to eat less forever. It asks you to eat in a way that allows insulin to rest. When insulin rests, fat burns. When fat burns, ketones rise. When ketones rise, the brain heals, inflammation drops, and metabolic health returns. This is not magic. This is biology remembering how it was designed to work. And if you remember only one thing from this message, let it be this: you are not failing ketosis. Ketosis is waiting for insulin to step aside. The right fats are not optional on keto. They are the signal. And without that signal, ketosis collapses no matter how low your carbs are. This is where most people are misled because for decades, fat was blamed for heart disease, weight gain, and inflammation. While insulin quietly destroyed metabolic health behind the scenes, science now shows the opposite. When the right fats are missing, the body panics, hormones destabilize, and ketosis becomes impossible to sustain. Your body does not enter ketosis just because carbs disappear. It enters ketosis when it feels safe enough to burn fat. And fat itself is what delivers that message of safety. Studies on ketogenic metabolism show that dietary fat suppresses insulin, raises glucagon, and activates fat-burning enzymes inside the liver. Without adequate fat, the liver simply does not produce ketones at meaningful levels. Low-fat keto is not ketosis. It is starvation with carbs removed. Here is the shocking truth most people never hear. Eating too little fat increases cortisol. Cortisol is a stress hormone that raises blood sugar by forcing the liver to make glucose. That glucose triggers insulin. Insulin shuts down ketone production instantly. This means that people who fear fat, count fat grams obsessively, or try to eat clean and light are unknowingly pushing themselves out of ketosis through stress chemistry, not food quantity. Scientific research confirms that medium-chain and saturated fats are uniquely ketogenic. These fats bypass normal digestion, go straight to the liver, and are converted into ketones rapidly. This is why butter, ghee, coconut-derived fats, and fatty animal foods raise blood ketones more efficiently than lean protein or low-fat meals. Ketones do not come from carbs being low. They come from fats being present. Another fact rarely discussed is that fat slows gastric emptying. This means glucose and amino acids enter the bloodstream more slowly, reducing insulin spikes. When fat is missing, protein converts more easily into glucose through gluconeogenesis, especially in insulin-resistant individuals. Multiple metabolic studies show that protein alone can stimulate insulin almost as strongly as carbohydrates when not paired with fat. Fat is the buffer that keeps insulin calm. The brain is one of the biggest beneficiaries of proper fat intake. The human brain is nearly 60% fat by dry weight, and it thrives on ketones produced from dietary fat. Research in neurology shows that ketones provide more stable energy than glucose, reduce oxidative stress, and improve mitochondrial efficiency. This is why patients with epilepsy, Alzheimer's disease, and Parkinson's disease show improvement when ketone levels rise. These benefits do not appear when fat intake is restricted, even if carbs are low. Omega-3 and monounsaturated fats play another critical role. They improve insulin sensitivity at the cellular level. This means that less insulin is required to manage blood sugar, allowing insulin levels to stay lower for longer. Studies show that people consuming adequate healthy fats experience reduced inflammation markers, improved lipid profiles, and better metabolic flexibility. In simple terms, the body becomes better at switching between fuels, and ketosis becomes easier to maintain. Here is something that surprises many people. Cholesterol is essential for hormone production. Testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, and cortisol are all made from cholesterol. When dietary fat is too low, hormone production suffers. Low hormones lead to fatigue, depression, stalled weight loss, and intense cravings. Many people blame keto for these symptoms when the real problem is fear of fat. The body cannot sustain ketosis if it cannot build hormones. Fat also controls hunger hormones. Leptin and ghrelin respond to energy density, not calorie counts. Fat-dense meals increase satiety, reduce GIN, and stabilize leptin signaling. This is why people eating adequate fat naturally eat less without trying. Hunger fades because the brain receives the message that energy is abundant. Ketosis becomes effortless when hunger is quiet. There is also a powerful inflammatory connection. Ketones produced from fat activate pathways that suppress inflammatory cytokines like TNF-alpha and IL-6. Chronic inflammation is directly linked to insulin resistance. When inflammation drops, insulin sensitivity improves and ketosis becomes easier to sustain. This is why people notice reduced joint pain, clearer skin, and improved digestion when fat intake is adequate. One of the most damaging myths is that all fats are equal. They are not. Industrial seed oils, trans fats, and oxidized vegetable oils damage mitochondria and increase insulin resistance. These fats sabotage ketosis by creating inflammation and oxidative stress. In contrast, natural fats, olive oil, butter, ghee, animal fats, avocado support mitochondrial health. Ketosis is a mitochondrial process. If mitochondria are damaged, ketones cannot be used efficiently even if they are produced. Clinical ketogenic protocols emphasize this repeatedly. Ketosis is sustained by fat quality and fat quantity. Patients who fail ketogenic therapy often consume too little fat or the wrong fats. When fat intake is corrected, ketone levels rise, symptoms improve, and metabolic markers stabilize. This pattern has been documented for decades in medical literature, long before keto became a trend. There is also an evolutionary perspective that cannot be ignored. Humans evolved eating fatty animal foods during long periods without carbohydrates. Ketosis was a survival advantage, not a mistake. Fat signaled survival. Insulin dropped. Ketones rose. The brain stayed sharp even when food was scarce. Modern low-fat dieting contradicts millions of years of metabolic programming. When people say keto is too hard, what they usually mean is that they are under-fueling with fat. The body interprets that as danger. Danger raises cortisol, cortisol raises glucose, glucose raises insulin, insulin shuts down ketosis. The cycle repeats until exhaustion sets in. The solution is not more discipline, the solution is more metabolic intelligence. Ketosis thrives when the body feels nourished, not punished. Fat provides that nourishment at the hormonal level. It tells the liver to make ketones, tells the brain it is safe, tells hunger hormones to calm down, and tells insulin to stay low. That is why the right fats do not just support ketosis, they protect it around the clock. And here is the truth that changes everything. Ketosis is not fragile when fueled correctly. It is resilient, it is stable, it is forgiving. When the right fats are present consistently, the body stays in fat-burning mode even with small fluctuations. Without them, ketosis collapses under the smallest stress. Ketosis does not survive on carb restriction alone. It survives on fat as information. And when that information is delivered daily, intentionally, and without fear, the body remembers exactly how to burn fat day and night. Consistency is the most underestimated force in human biology, and nowhere is this more true than in ketosis. Most people believe fat burning is about perfection. Perfect macros, perfect meals, perfect days. But the body does not respond to perfection. It responds to patterns. And when the pattern is stable, the metabolism adapts. When the pattern is chaotic, the body resists. This is why consistency beats perfection every single time in long-term fat burning. Here is the uncomfortable truth backed by decades of metabolic research. The human body hates uncertainty. When fuel signals change constantly, high fat one day, low fat the next, long fasting followed by snacking, strict keto followed by sudden carb exposure, the body activates survival pathways, cortisol rises, thyroid output slows, insulin sensitivity worsens, fat loss stalls. This is not because the body is broken, it is because the body is protecting you. Studies on metabolic adaptation show that erratic eating patterns increase stress hormones even when calories are controlled. Cortisol stimulates glucose production in the liver, raising insulin and blocking ketone production. This means someone can do keto 5 days a week and undo it hormonally in 2 days. Not because of carbs alone, but because the body no longer trusts the fuel environment. The liver stops committing to ketone production when it senses inconsistency. Consistency trains the liver. That is a scientific fact. When insulin stays low day after day, the liver upregulates enzymes responsible for fat oxidation and ketone synthesis. Mitochondria increase in number and efficiency. This process is called metabolic adaptation, and it only happens with repeated signals, not occasional effort. Ketosis becomes easier over time, not because you are stronger, but because your cells are better trained. This is why the first weeks of ketosis feel hard, and later weeks feel effortless. Research shows that fat oxidation capacity increases significantly after several weeks of consistent low insulin signaling. The body becomes metabolically flexible. Hunger hormones recalibrate. Grain decreases. Leptin sensitivity improves. Appetite becomes quiet. None of this happens if ketosis is constantly interrupted. Perfection triggers stress. Consistency creates safety. Stress chemistry is one of the most powerful fattering forces in the body. Studies link chronic stress to increased visceral fat even without excess calories. When people obsess over every gram, every mistake, every social meal, cortisol rises. Elevated cortisol directly antagonizes ketosis by raising blood sugar and insulin. Ironically, trying too hard can biologically prevent fat loss. There is a shocking health fact few people talk about. One single high-carb meal does not erase ketosis adaptations, but repeated inconsistency does. Research shows that metabolically adapted individuals can return to ketosis faster after minor disruptions because their enzymes and mitochondria remain trained. But beginners who constantly start and stop never reach this stage. They remain metabolically fragile, blaming food when the real issue is inconsistency. Consistency also stabilizes electrolytes, which are critical for ketosis. Sodium, potassium, and magnesium losses are higher in low insulin states. When intake is inconsistent, symptoms like fatigue, dizziness, heart palpitations, and cravings appear. These symptoms are often mistaken for keto flu or failure, when in reality they are signs of interrupted adaptation. Regular intake of minerals allows the nervous system to calm, allowing ketosis to stabilize. The brain responds to consistency even faster than the body. Neuroscience research shows that predictable energy supply reduces anxiety, improves focus, and stabilizes mood. Ketones provide steady fuel, but only when they are available consistently. Fluctuating between glucose and ketones creates neurological stress, increasing cravings and emotional eating. This is why people who cheat frequently feel out of control, while those who eat simply and repetitively feel free. Another powerful truth is that consistency reduces decision fatigue. The more choices you make, the more stress hormones rise. Simplified, repeatable meals lower cognitive load, which lowers cortisol. Lower cortisol supports insulin sensitivity. Better insulin sensitivity supports ketosis. This cascade is biological, not motivational. Simpler eating patterns produce better hormonal outcomes. Weight loss studies repeatedly show that adherence predicts success better than diet type. Keto works not because it is extreme, but because it simplifies insulin control when followed consistently. When people abandon perfection and focus on repeatable behaviors, same breakfast, similar meals, stable fat intake, the body responds with predictability. Fat loss becomes boring, and boring is sustainable. There is also an evolutionary reason consistency matters. Humans evolved eating similar foods repeatedly, not rotating diets daily. The metabolism expects familiarity. When food signals are consistent, the body commits resources to that fuel system. When signals are mixed, the body hedges its bets. Ketosis requires commitment from the liver. The liver will not commit if the environment keeps changing. One of the most shocking findings in metabolic science is that insulin sensitivity improves with routine, not restriction. Regular meal timing, consistent macronutrient ratios, and stable fat intake improve glucose control even without calorie reduction. This is why people often see better results eating more fat consistently than eating less fat inconsistently. The body rewards reliability. Consistency also protects muscle. Erratic dieting increases muscle breakdown through elevated cortisol. Stable ketosis with adequate protein and fat preserves lean mass while burning fat. Studies on ketogenic diets show muscle preservation improves once adaptation occurs. That adaptation requires time and repetition. You cannot rush biology. People often say they fall off the wagon, but the truth is there is no wagon. There is only signal repetition. Every meal is a message. When the message is stable, the body listens. When the message changes constantly, the body ignores it. Consistency is how you earn metabolic trust. Ketosis is not maintained by fear of mistakes. It is maintained by calm repetition. Eat the same core foods. Keep insulin low most of the time. Fuel with fat consistently. Manage stress. Sleep regularly. These boring actions outperform extreme strategies every time. And here is the most liberating truth of all. Consistency allows flexibility. Once the body is adapted, small deviations no longer cause collapse. The metabolism becomes resilient. Ketosis becomes forgiving. But you cannot reach that stage by chasing perfection. You reach it by showing up the same way day after day. Fat burning is not activated by intensity. It is activated by reliability. When the body trusts the environment, it releases stored energy willingly. That is real metabolic freedom. So if there is one lesson to carry forward, let it be this. Your body does not need you to be perfect. It needs you to be consistent. When consistency becomes your strategy, ketosis stops being a struggle and starts becoming your natural